This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Chamber. Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. Senate Chamber. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Chamber. Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. Senate Chamber. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Chamber. Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. Senate Chamber. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Chamber. Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. Senate Chamber. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Chamber. Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. Senate Chamber. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Chamber. Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. Senate Chamber. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Chamber. Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. Senate Chamber. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Chamber. Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. Senate Chamber. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.
The Senate will come to order. The senators will take their seats. Those persons not entitled to the privileges of the floor will retire to the gallery. Good morning, senators. Good morning, guests. Good morning. The senators and those in attendance, if you are able, please rise. We will be led in prayer this morning by Apostle Fred M. Wyatt of Speaking Spirit Ministries in Richmond. Following the prayer, if everyone will please remain standing, and we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America by our Senate page, Caffrey Miller of Hanover.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let us pray. Father God, we invite you into this place even now. On today, God, saying thank you for basic things like activity in our limbs and breath in our bodies. And God, we thank you that even now, as you inhabit all things, God, that you watch over this great nation and you watch over this great state. And God, I ask that these elected officials that you've called upon for this great state of Virginia, that you cover them, that you watch over them, that you protect them, that you watch over their kids and you watch over their grandkids. God, let them know that this is not a profession or a job, but this is a calling and a high calling. And God, we ask that you protect them and that people need them, and this year will be their best year yet. God, we thank you for unity in this place. For unity, as you said, is like oil, and there's a commanded blessing where there's unity. So I thank you for unity even in this house on today, God. And God, I ask that you would bless this great country and this great state with great peace, great prosperity, and that this great state of Virginia would become a model state for how government is run. We bless you for all of these things, and we bless you for all of these elected officials. No hurt, harm, or danger shall come near thy dwelling. And we thank you for this great state of Virginia, excelling in all things. And we thank you for this, and we ask that you bless this day. And all say amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will call the roll. Those who are present, please vote aye. The clerk will close the roll.
You have a quorum, Madam President. Senate Journal for Monday, January 20th, 2025.
Senator Aird, the senator from Eastern Enrico, moves that the reading of the journal be waived. Those in favor of waiving the reading of the journal will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 2, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 37, noes 2. Rule 36-1, the reading of the journal is waived. The clerk will report any communications from the House of Delegates. Chair recognizes the senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Surivel.
Good afternoon, Madam President.
Good afternoon.
Madam President, I move the waive reading of the communication from the House of Delegates.
The question is, shall the reading of the communication from the House of Delegates be waived? Those in favor will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. The reading of the communication from the House of Delegates is waived. The clerk will report any communications from the governor.
I do not have any, Madam President.
Now comes the time in the morning hour when we will discover who all of our beautiful guests are. And the procedure is that your senator will rise and tell us who you are. And please, when you hear your name or your organization called, rise at that time as well. But hold your applause until I have officially welcomed you, and then we will applaud you together. And so with that, I call on the senior senator from Enrico, Senator Bagby.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning.
Good
afternoon.
afternoon.
I rise for an introduction.
The senator may continue.
Madam President, today's invocation was given by Apostle Fred Wyatt, the senior pastor at Speaking Spirit Ministries. Apostle Wyatt is a pastor, entrepreneur, and visionary church planner. This expanding multi-site church based in Richmond, Virginia, has seen remarkable growth under his leadership, now encompassing 4 different locations and attracting more than 4,200 parishioners. The church expansion includes a movie theater, an event space, a gym, and a community center, all of which have significantly contributed to our local community. Additionally, the church supports 6 to 8 various worldwide and over 22,000 young people annually. Apostle Wyatt's passion for the city of Richmond and its surrounding counties his passion is to make sure that no family lacks the bare necessities of life. Recently, Apostle Wyatt was rewarded by Henrico County with the street naming on the church, by the church grounds. And so the community recognizes his good work. I'm happy to be on his prayer list, and I hope that, Madam President, you will ask and grant a warm welcome of the Senate.
Thank you so very much for coming once again and praying for us. And indeed, you prayed for the nation. And, you know, it used to be that our parents would tell us, get home before the street lights turn on, but you have your own street now. And what does that tell you? It means that people see your good works. People see your good works and they wanted to honor you. You don't get that unless you've done mighty great things in your community and elsewhere. And in fact, the growth of your church to include not just, well, it's a hands-on church, as I understand it. Businesses, you're creating opportunities for everyone. And we're so glad that you're doing that. So, senators, let us give him the warm welcome of his Senate. Senator French, the senator from Shenandoah. Your microphone, Senator.
Madam President, it's my pleasure to introduce someone from my district and also the district you live in. It's Kermit Gaither.
The senator has the floor.
Oh. Is Mr. Gaither in the gallery? Yes.
He is.
Kermit Gaither is the Frederick County Director of Soil and Water Conservation District. In addition to, he is the first Vice President of the Winchester Area NAACP branch, 712 7B. Kermit is the first deputy sheriff in Winchester City, Virginia, and the first firefighter/EMT in Warren County, Virginia. Kermit just retired after 25 years of service, career firefighter. Kermit sits on multiple community boards, rounding a life of public service. Madam President, will you join me in recognizing Kermit?
The Honorable, thank you for being with us, and for 25 years. So you probably are part of the adage that says, if you love what you do, it's never work. And we're so glad that there you were in service to us. Indeed, you put your life on the line every day. You put that vest on and went to work as a deputy sheriff. And thank you so very much for what you do. Senators, let us give him the warm welcome of his Senate. Senator Favola, the senator from Arlington.
Good afternoon, Madam President. Madam
Good
President,
afternoon.
I rise for purposes of an introduction.
The senator may say on.
Thank you. Joining us in the gallery this afternoon is the Virginia Assisted Living Association. And the Virginia Assisted Living Association is making a concerted effort to visit lawmakers to actually communicate and educate us about the importance of the assisted living services and all of the services they provide in our various communities. The Virginia Assisted Living Association does serve as a trusted partner to our state agencies, and they also assist in the development of our regulations and our policies regarding the care of seniors as we progress from maybe living at home to having to move to an assisted living facility. As the official state affiliate of Argentum, the Virginia Assisted Living Association leads efforts to address so many challenges, including those challenges ahead of us. And I really respect their efforts to provide affordable and home-like care for so many seniors who can no longer remain in their own homes. With this introduction, Madam President, I hope it is the will of the Senate to welcome the Virginia Assisted Living Association.
Thank you for coming and for observing your Senate. You know, your name says it all, assisted living. At some point in our lives, we're all going to pass that way. And it behooves us to treat people much better sometimes than we do. And so we're glad that you are there and caring for those who are not able as much as they used to. Senators, let us give them the warm welcome of their Senate. Senator Peake, the senator from Lynchburg.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam President. I rise for the purposes of an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the Senate. Today is Kids Deserve More Day, sponsored by the Family Foundation. And so I would ask that we have anybody here on behalf of Kids Deserve More Day and the Church Ambassador Network. Rise. Do we have them all? So, Madam President, there we go. These folks are here not only to express support for legislation that gives families the educational freedom to place their children in a school or access resources that not only meet their children's unique needs, but also gives them an environment where they can thrive academically, emotionally, and socially. The parents and students you see, yep, some of which are wearing yellow and red up there, are here to remind you of the importance of education freedom for all students. No student is the same, and while some thrive in our public schools, others need private schools or home schooling, and they are here to protect that freedom. These parents are here today to advocate for more education freedom, more options, and to protect existing programs and laws that give the ability to access the best educational environment for their children. Please join me in welcoming these parents and students to Kids Deserve More Day here at the Capitol.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to see your Senate, and thank you for coming to, well, tell us how you really feel about the issues that are important to you. And indeed, education is foundational, and without a good education, our children get nowhere, and they get there very quickly. And so we must ensure that they have that sure foundation. Thank you. Senators, let us give them the warm welcome of their Senate. Senator Deeds, the senator from Charlottesville.
Madam President, I rise for an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Owen Hupp was elected as the 81st governor of the American Legion Boys State of Virginia. For those of you who are not familiar with this program, it's a summer leadership and public policy program for rising high school seniors to help them better understand the working relationship between local government and local, regional, and state government. He was elected by his peers out of a pool of just under 500 young men from throughout Virginia. Owen is the first governor elected from Charlottesville in the program's 81-year history. He's very interested in public policy, and upon graduation from Western Albemarle High School this spring, he will be continuing his education at the University of Alabama. Roll Tide. He's here with his grandmother, Ann Hughes, a long-standing friend, and notice I didn't say old friend, I said long-standing friend, who some of you may recognize. I'd ask that you give them the warm greetings of the Senate.
Good afternoon, Owen, and good afternoon, Grandma. You must be so proud of Owen. Yes, and Owen, we're proud of you, and you're establishing leadership, and you're thinking about the future. And indeed, you are our future. Some of us are coming down the mountain and you're starting up. And it's going to be up to you to preserve America. So we're glad that you've taken on the role, glad that you've taken on the challenge, and you're going to bring others with you because that's what leaders do. Senators, let us give him the warm welcome of his Senate. Senator Diggs, the senator from York.
Madam President, I rise for an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you. In the gallery today, we have with us participants of LEAD Peninsula. LEAD is an acronym for the need to learn, explore, absorb, and disseminate the portrait of the Virginia Peninsula. LEAD Peninsula was established 41 years ago and has graduated over 1,300 participants. The current class of 2025 consists of 50 participants. LEAD Peninsula is a community and civic immersion program which offers a comprehensive behind-the-scenes look at the various components that make the peninsula a great place to live. LEAD Peninsula also fosters opportunities for increased communication and cooperation amongst the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. Since 1984, LEAD Peninsula has been introducing its class members to the major components of the Greater Peninsula community through an intensive 10-month program. The LEAD Peninsula members participate in educational sessions, tours, and candid conversation with community leaders. The goal is to provide intellectual and personal connections with the various aspects of our community, including business, education, environment, health, history, hospitality, human services, infrastructure, local, state, and federal government, military and federal impact, public safety, tourism, transportation, and workforce development, every aspect of our communities. And I'm proud to say that I've been invited to speak to LEAD on several occasions. I ask that you extend them the warm welcome of the Senate.
Welcome, LEAD. Thank you for coming as well. And one thing I heard the senator say was communication among the various entities, public, private, nonprofit, military, you name it. And we are sorely lacking, unfortunately, in communicating with each other. And if we had more of that, even with views we disagree with, we might get along a little bit better. And thank you for wanting to do that. What you're doing is a sacrifice, and we thank you for your service. Senators, let us give them the warm welcome of their Senate. Senator Rouse, the junior senator from Virginia Beach.
Good afternoon, Madam President. I rise for introduction.
The senator has the floor. Good afternoon.
I have the distinct honor of welcoming the Virginia Promise Partnerships, if they may rise. Can you see them? 'Cause I can't.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Virginia Promise Partnerships is a coalition of leading organizations working to ensure all Virginia families have access to affordable, quality child care by 2030, regardless of income. With the support of key stakeholders, Virginia Promise Partnerships Lobby Day is today, and the event aims to raise greater awareness about challenging working families and child care small businesses face, while pushing for legislative action that secures a brighter future for children and strengthens the Commonwealth's workforce and economy. This collective effort, powered by the voices of parents and providers, reflects a shared commitment to building a brighter future for Virginia's children through greater investment in their early learning opportunities. Madam President, please extend the warm welcome of the Senate to them. Thank you.
Thank you also for coming. And indeed, we are all, when it comes to child care, in fact, it's so hard to find because it is so expensive at times. And for those who want to remain in the workforce or come back, it is absolutely necessary because our society has changed. And it takes all of us, parents, guardians, providers, businesses, you name it, to help to make sure that happens. And we know that we've put, I believe, $350 million in the budget to ensure that the opportunity is there, and we know that it's not enough, and we're working on getting some more, because without that, the job creators that we need won't be here. So, senators, let us give them the warm welcome of their Senate. The senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Mulcahy.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise for a very brief introduction.
Senator has the floor.
I rise to introduce a group here from the Virginia Society for Human Rights. If they're here, if they could rise. I hope that we can give them a warm welcome. I was not provided any further information about the group, so I don't know their names, but I hope that we'll give them a warm Senate welcome today.
Well, good afternoon. Well, what we do know about you is that you care about the issues that matter to you, and you're here, human rights. And we're so glad that we're going to hear, I'm sure you've visited your senators and delegates already, and possibly some more that still need to hear from you, and your voices must be heard. We're so grateful that you are here. Senators, let us give them the warm welcome of their Senate. Senator Boysko, the senator from Northern Fairfax.
Thank you, Madam President. I have two introductions right now.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I will start with the nurses. We have today the Virginia Nurses Association in the gallery with us, and they represent 123,000 registered nurses in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And they have representatives here on Capitol Square today to advocate on behalf of their profession and behalf of their patients. My mother worked as a registered nurse when I was young, and so they have a special place in my heart. And I hope the Senate will join me today in extending the nurses a very warm welcome.
Yes, nurses rise. I like that. Nurses rise. Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for talking to us about, again, the issues that also matter to you. We don't have enough nurses. We know that. And so that is why we've created programs, your government has, to bring even more folks into the profession. We've all been helped by nurses whenever we've needed your help, when we're in the hospital and you've been there. And one thing I'd like to say publicly is we know that you are not you are not a, how shall I say this? You're not a servant in that way. No, you're professionals, and we're so glad for you. We don't have enough of you. Thank you all very much for your sacrifice. Your profession is a profession of sacrifice. Senators, let us give them the warm welcome of their Senate. Again, Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Madam President. Today, I'm pleased to introduce a group of citizen advocates from all around the Commonwealth who have come to participate in Virginia's third Democracy Day. Over 70 citizens are regrouped in our respective chambers today, representing a dozen nonprofit organizations involved in good governance. These groups include Big Money Out Virginia, the League of Women Voters, Common Cause, Represent Us, Upvote Virginia, Clean Virginia, Veterans for All Voters, and others. They are here today to urge us to support legislation that makes our government more responsive and reflective of everyday Virginians. They believe that to seriously address other issues facing our society, we need to change the way our state government works. Their priority of good governance legislation includes a focus on campaign finance reform, with bills ranging from restricting personal use of campaign funds, enhancing disclosure of independent expenditures, more transparency in reporting, and public financing of elections. In addition, they are encouraging legislators to support ethics reform, ranked choice voting, and protecting voting rights, things that we all care about. I think that we're all aware that efforts that governance reform in Virginia are not new, but progress has been difficult. And this is in spite of the fact that the strong, widespread support of Virginia citizens, irrespective of party, support these reforms. So let's let this be the year when the state legislature takes up the steps that we need to improve our reputation when the federal government is not always seen in the same light, and show the citizens of Virginia that Virginia legislature is a strong and functioning and ethical body. And I ask that you give our community members a warm welcome.
Please rise if you are here. Thank you for coming and for letting your voices be heard. The Senator has indeed spoke on so many different aspects of all that you do, and so I don't think I have to add any more to it except to say your government, of course, is answerable to you, and so thank you for wanting transparency and accountability. We all want that. Senators, let us give them the warm welcome of their Senate.
And Madam Chair, I have a third.
A third introduction. The Senator may continue.
Thank you for, they just walked in the door. Today, we have in the gallery the Planned Parenthood Advocates of Virginia here for their annual lobby day. And I would ask them all to stand. Planned Parenthood Advocates of Virginia is a statewide advocacy organization dedicated to preserving and expanding access to reproductive health care in the Commonwealth through legislation, public education, electoral activity, and litigation. Their mission is to ensure that individuals and families have the freedom, the information, and the ability to make their own informed reproductive choices. And today they represent thousands of Virginians who believe our state is stronger when everyone has the autonomy to make decisions about their families, their health, and their futures. In particular, they're here to advocate for a bill that we will be hearing later today, SJ 247, the Reproductive Freedom Amendment, which affirms the decision regarding pregnancy, including abortion, contraception, miscarriage management, that they are personal and private matters best left to Virginians and their families. And they share with me their excitement and appreciation that this body is taking steps to advance this historic constitutional amendment. I hope that it will be the pleasure of the body to give them a warm Senate greeting.
We thank you for coming, and thank you for, well, coming to all of your senators and delegates to let your voices be heard. Senators, let us give them the warm welcome of their Senate. The senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise for the purposes of introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, on behalf of myself and the senator from King George, would like to introduce two individuals in the gallery who are very involved in making sure that Caroline County continues to prosper and move forward. They're Jeff Seeley and Mike Hubbard. Came down to talk to a number of us about issues very important to their county, and if you could offer them the warm thanks of the Senate.
Gentlemen, here you are, wanting your community to prosper. And indeed, that is what we wish for all of Virginia. And we're glad that you're letting your voices be known, especially you're not taking anything for granted. Yes, we all want to prosper, but you're making sure that where you represent, absolutely, we know what you're trying to accomplish and the help that you're going to need to do it. So thank you for that. Senators, let us give them the warm welcome of their Senate. Senator Lucas, the senator from Portsmouth.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, it is with great pleasure that I rise on behalf of my Link sister, Senator Mamie Locke, to introduce my Link sisters, the distinguished women of Portsmouth VA chapter of the Links Incorporated, to include my Link sister,
The senator may continue.
Thank you, Madam
Yes,
President.
ma'am. Please rise.
To include my Link sister and daughter, my namesake, Lisa Louise Lucas Burke. Madam President, as I look at the number of links and the students with us today, I realize that maybe over half of them are over at the house right now and haven't made it to this side. But the Portsmouth VA chapter of the Links Incorporated has established a partnership with the Portsmouth Public Schools Arts Department and the American Cancer Society to implement an umbrella program at the 2025 General Assembly. The umbrella program falls into 5 programming categories: the arts, services to youth, health and human services, national trends and services, and international trends and services. The program Building Bridges to Reduce Health Disparities and Promote Health Equity supports students in advancing artistic talents and investing in their health. The program offers a real-world way for student civic engagement by meeting with their legislators. The Links partnership with Portsmouth Public Schools also promotes a visual arts program for high school students. This partnership supports students in advancing their creative artistic talents and exposes them to learning about how taking charge of one's health can greatly improve long-term health care. With the support of the Public Schools Arts Department, the artwork will be transported to Speaker Don Scott's conference room at the General Assembly building. Madam President, it is with a lot of pleasure that I ask you to please extend a heartfelt welcome to the Links of the Portsmouth, Virginia chapter.
Welcome, Links. Thank you also for coming, and thank you for, well, reaching back to the young people to say, you're coming with me, and we're going to find ways to make you part of your community, make you a part of the leadership of your community, make you a part of the future of your community. And you've gone into the high schools to help establish those relationships and found other ways to do so. You are truly well named. You're a part of the link. Thank you. Thank you for what you do. Senators, let us give them the warm welcome of their Senate. The senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Madam President, I rise for an introduction.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, at risk of repeating Senator Mulcahy, I went over and pulled her green sheet, and I know that Senator Mulcahy and I want to welcome a group that was misidentified a little bit earlier. The group in the gallery is the Virginia Society for Human Life. It was not Senator Mulcahy, but the green sheet misidentified them, and I would ask them to rise. I would tell you that these are folks from across the Commonwealth of Virginia who represent parents, families, people who are concerned about the sanctity of innocent human life, whether it is the unborn, the newborn, the elderly, or the infirm. And they too are here today to watch these important proceedings. And as I tell people all the time, you know, we spend a lot of time working together to solve a lot of problems in Virginia, and we do a lot of that work across the partisan aisle. It's just fixing things. And I'm glad that we have those personal relationships that allow us to do that. But every once in a while, and today is one of those days, we take up issues that are what I call cats and dogs issues. The reasons we have philosophical differences, the issues that are important to folks on one side of the aisle or another side of the aisle, and every once in a while we cross over. But these advocates are here today to advocate for their cause of innocent human life, and I would ask you to extend the warm welcome of the Senate to this group from the Virginia Society for Human Life.
Well, you get to stand a second time. And again, I'm thanking you for coming, thanking you for letting us know about the matters that are near and dear to your heart, life itself. Thank you for your foundational work. Senators, let us give them the warm welcome of their Senate. Is there any other business to come for the morning hour? Hearing none, the clerk will call the calendar.
Senate calendar for Tuesday, January 21st, 2025. Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on third reading.
Chair recognizes Senator Surreville, the senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Madam President, I move that the Senate bills on third reading uncontested calendar on pages 1 through 8, Senate Bill 768 through 1310 be placed in their final passage in the block. Any senator desiring to remove a bill from the block shall do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill.
The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested calendar, third reading, pages 1 through 8, Senate Bills 768 through Senate Bill 1310, be placed upon their final passage in the block with the understanding that any senator desiring a bill to be removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All those in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are before us in the block. The clerk will now read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 768. Senate Bill 787, Senate Bill 807, Senate Bill 808, Senate Bill 841, Senate Bill 843, Senate Bill 846, Senate Bill 885, Senate Bill 888, Senate Bill 892, Senate Bill 913, Senate Bill 965, Senate Bill 986, Senate Bill 993, Senate Bill 1043, Senate Bill 1055, Senate Bill 1095, Senate Bill 1115, Senate Bill 1210, Senate Bill 1228, Senate Bill 1282, Senate Bill 1310.
The question is, shall the bills in the block pass? All in favor of passage of the bills will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The bills in the block pass.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on third reading. Senate Bill 748, a bill to direct the Board of Housing and Community Development to evaluate changes to the Uniform Statewide Building Code addressing temperature regulation.
Senator Favola. Senator from Arlington.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a very straightforward bill. It merely directs the Board of Housing and Community Development, as part of their Uniform Building Code required evaluation of changes, to consider the possibility of implementing requirements that would direct those that have multifamily housing, or actually one unit or more that's rented out, to ensure that during certain periods of the year, say from March 1st to October 15th, that the temperature is not hotter or greater than 77 degrees in the units, and that from October 15th to May 1st, the temperature doesn't go below 68 degrees. This is just a study, and I don't know if you're aware, but when the Building Code Commission actually meets, they have a very extensive public comment process. So certainly landlords and builders will be part of that, as will tenants and others. Having explained the bill, I hope it is the pleasure of the body that it pass. Thank you.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 812, a bill relating to Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, landlord remedies, noncompliance with rental agreement.
The junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Rouse.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the bill pass, and speaking to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. This bill just increases to 5 days to 14 days the mandatory waiting period after a landlord serves written notice on a tenant, notifying the tenant of its non-payment of rent and the landlord's intention to terminate the rental agreement. If the rent is not paid before, the landlord may pursue remedies for termination of the rental agreement. And this does not excuse a person renting their home from rent that's owed. It's trying to keep those folks who may be behind their rent in their home, since we know the homeless rate is on the rise, as well as if they tend to go to court, start those court proceedings, lawyer fees and court fees are tacked on to that. And partnering, speaking with local organizations like 4Kids, they mentioned this is the most effective way to help those who are behind on rent catch up, so they can get them to the next pay period, and so they can find ways to get whole when it comes to paying their behind rent. That is the bill before you, and I hope that it passes. Thank you, Madam President.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 20, noes 19.
Ayes 20, noes 19. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 866, a bill relating to Real Estate Board membership qualifications.
The senator from Orange, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask the bill pass, and speaking to that.
The senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, Senate Bill 866 was brought to me from the Realtors Association. The problem they're trying to solve in this bill is to get a higher quality candidate to help with their board at DPOR. It's a very work-heavy board. I guess some of the members they had appointed there in the past didn't show up, and they didn't have the education or experience to deal with some of the issues. Board members are responsible for reviewing every education instructor, reviewing every course, including its full curriculum, reviewing license applications, and most importantly, reviewing and adjudicating all violations for real estate licenses and fair housing to determine fines, penalties, and even suspension of license. 866 increases the years of work experience required from 5 years to 10 years. It's also noted that not all real estate licenses work in real estate full-time. Many only close 1 or 2 transactions in a year. The bill also adds additional experience requirements for licensed board members, including experience in real estate credentialing, certification by the real estate board as a real estate instructor, or training or experience in adjudication of other real estate licenses. Finally, 866 would require at least 1 licensed member of the board have experience in residential property. It's the realtor's hope that this will provide a stronger, more experienced real estate board, and I'd ask the Senate to pass the bill.
I thank the senator, but senators, the chair is informed that we are having technical difficulties. Apparently, we have the incorrect bill that is showing, and in fact, the board is stuck. And therefore, I am ordering a temporary recess so we can, at ease, so that we can have the board rebooted. Senators will take their seats. The board is back, and we have business. Madam Clerk, shall we ask the senator to recite his information all over again?
Madam President, Madam President, I ask the bill pass, and speaking to that.
The senator may continue.
Having previously explained what the bill was, I now ask that the Senate vote yes.
Senator Mulcahy, the senator from Mecklenburg. Senator Boysko, the senator from Northern Fairfax.
Speaking very briefly to the bill.
The senator has the floor.
I served on the Board of Real Estate before I was elected. It is a very hardworking board. Senator Reeves is exactly right. This is something that is a very serious appointment, and having thoughtful, experienced realtors on that board is very meaningful and important. And I also ask the body to support the bill.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 884, a bill relating to Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, early termination of rental agreement, victims of family abuse, sexual abuse, or criminal sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking.
Madam President.
For what purpose does the senator from Franklin rise?
Madam President, I rise for the purposes of a motion with relation to Senate Bill 884.
The senator may continue.
Thank you, Madam President, and with all due respect to the patron, Senate Bill 884 has something to do, of course, it pertains to getting out of a lease when you have a protective order, when there's a threat. And certainly I think everybody on this side of the aisle is sensitive to that and wants to find a solution. However, this bill, Madam President, went through general laws. It went through courts last year. I was on a work group to try to iron out the things that would have made it more agreeable, and that would have been a fair way of having judicial review. This bill in its current form does not have that, nor has it been reviewed by the Courts Committee, which I think should look at this bill, Madam President, because it deals with landlord-tenant law, the Virginia Landlord-Tenant Act, and civil law, and even criminal law, all of those things that we take up in the Committee on Courts of Justice. And for those reasons, respectfully to the patron, I think what she's doing is not only noble, and we should try to find a way to do it. I think this bill needs a little more work, and I think it needs work of the Courts of Justice Committee in order to make it right so we can bring it back and we can all join together and vote on it. Thank you, Madam President.
Madam President.
That was his. Was that the senator's motion, that it be re-referred to?
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we re-refer it to the Courts of Justice Committee.
Madam President.
Senator Perry, the senior senator from Loudoun.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise in opposition to the motion.
Does the senator wish to state?
Yes. Madam President, this is a bill that has gone through the Housing Commission subcommittee, a meeting with Senator Stanley and some other stakeholders, then the full Housing Commission, then through general laws. It came out of both the subcommittee and full Housing Commission with full support. No one voting against, including Senator Stanley. And also came out of general laws with, I think, a 12 yeas, 2 abstentions. And so I would ask that we reject the senator's motion and move the bill to a full vote on the floor today.
Senator Surville, the senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Speaking to the motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I mean, I would ask the body to oppose the motion. This bill's been reviewed probably by 3 or 4 committees at this point. I would just note that in the rules of the Senate, General Laws Committee has jurisdiction over landlord-tenant. I actually asked my seatmate, if we could change that rule before we adopted the rules this year. He didn't like that idea. He wanted to keep landlord-tenant. And so that's the committee of jurisdiction. Every once in a while, we do take bills out of landlord-tenant bills every once in a while. But this is very similar to other types of policies. For example, if somebody gets a military personnel active duty, gets orders changing where they're deployed, their landlord-tenant agreement terminates. This is a very similar concept, and I've talked to a few members of courts. I don't think we need to see this. I would ask that we just leave it where it is and vote on it today.
Again, Senator Stanley, the senator from Franklin.
Thank you, Madam President. Speak to the motion in response to its patron.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. The senior senator from Loudoun is not correct. She's correct that I worked on the bill and was willing to do so. However, what we had come to an agreement on that I believed at that time was an agreement between all of the stakeholders, including those landlords and people that represent tenancies and all of those things, that we would have a level of scrutiny and judicial review, not a magistrate, because I am an attorney and I can tell you magistrates issue warrants and preliminary protective orders all the time, and there's no level of judicial review which can weigh the facts and determine whether those facts rise to the level of not only the issuance of a protective order, but also then to trigger the termination of a lease. And the second thing is I did not vote on this bill because I was not at that Housing Commission meeting. I had court. It had been set for Monday, and I had court on Wednesday, and it got moved to Wednesday, and I didn't see it. So I never did vote on this. If I had I been there at the Housing Commission, which I'm proud to serve on, I would have brought up the fact that we had worked out, I thought in a work group through a Zoom call, a measure by which we would have had a judicial review, at least in the preliminary stage, which happens after the emergency preliminary protective order is issued. And we did not have that, and we do not have that in the bill. And I think we need to have the courts committee look at this in a way that really kind of delves deep, because we're talking about not just freedoms, Madam President, we're talking about property rights. We're talking about, and I've seen this 100 times in my 31 career as an attorney. People abuse the system, unfortunately, and could make up an allegation in order to get out of a lease. And the only person making that judgment call is a magistrate who's probably been on call for 11, 12 hours working very hard and makes a judgment call based on one testimony of one person without any supporting evidence. And I just think we need to strike a balance between the two, especially if we're going to go this way, where we're going to let people out of contracts. It's a noble effort. It's a noble reason. But I think the mechanics, Madam President, of this bill allow it to be subject to people using the system to get out of landlord-tenant agreements when, in fact, it is to protect those victims from harm. Thank you, Madam President.
Madam President.
The senior senator from Loudoun, Senator Perry.
Just if I could briefly respond to Senator Franklin.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you. I would just say, I think what I said was that Senator Stanley did not vote against the bill in the Housing Commission, which he did not vote against the bill in the Housing Commission. So I don't think I misstated that. What I would say as it relates to the issuance of emergency protective orders and magistrates is what I said in the Housing Commission, which is the bill as this bill relates in other states also is broader than the bill that I brought here today. And it includes things like other people for victims of human trafficking, for victims of stalking, for victims of sexual assault, for victims of domestic violence, who, as we all know, many of them do not contact law enforcement at all and are stuck in housing situations that they can't get out of. These types of folks are often the most marginalized, typically women, who are stuck in housing situations that they are unable to escape. And so for those who don't go into the law enforcement system at all, who don't go see a magistrate, who don't call the police, who don't go to court and seek a protective order, they often stay. And many other states have done things like allowed for therapists, allowed for psychiatrists, allowed for domestic violence counselors to write letters. And those letters then can be provided to that individual's landlord to allow those leases be terminated. What my bill does is allows for a level of judicial review and protects those victims. Perhaps it should be broader. But in an effort to seek compromise, I brought a narrower bill up front. And as I understand the senator from Franklin's objection, His objection is that a magistrate would have review over this, and he doesn't think that's substantial enough. I would point out to him that for emergency protective orders, courts also issue judges, regular judges. So it's not all emergency protective orders. And I would also point out that we entrust magistrates to do all measures of things in the criminal justice system. Even if they've been working 12-hour days, even if they're tired, even if they're exhausted, we allow them to issue warrants in criminal cases all day and all night. We allow them to issue emergency custody orders. We allow them to issue red flag orders. And all variety of measures, we entrust them to do those things. And I entrust them to issue a protective order and a complaint. And I believe that level of review is sufficient to protect against any injustices that the senator is concerned about. And further, I would say the subcommittee of Housing Commission and the full committee of the Housing Commission and at least 12 people on the general laws also thought that that was sufficient. And so I would once again move that we reject the senator from Franklin's motion and that we move forward the bill today.
The question is, shall Senate Bill 884 be re-referred to the Committee on Courts? Those in favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. This will be a recorded vote. Those in favor of re-referring to committee Senate Bill 884 will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 19, noes 21.
Ayes 19, noes 21. The motion fails. Senator Perry.
Yes, Madam President. I rise to move passage of the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you. Madam President, this is a bill that seeks to expand protections for victims of domestic violence, victims of sexual abuse, victims of stalking, and victims of human trafficking. The bill in its original form was a bill that provided for only victims of domestic violence and only victims of sexual abuse to seek early termination of their leases after a permanent protective order had been issued or after a criminal conviction had been found. This bill backs up that process, and the reason for that is that the whole intention of the bill is to protect some of our most vulnerable individuals, the individuals in these types of situations, and allow them to terminate their leases at a point in time so that they can escape their abuser or hide from their abuser. The problem with the current law is that often these types of cases, it takes a very long time, often years, to move through the criminal justice system. So by the time you were to get a conviction, you don't still have that lease. That lease is long expired. And so people say, well, what about a protective order? That can move through the system faster. But as a former prosecutor, I know that the vast majority of prosecutors don't want protective orders to precede the criminal cases. They want them to come after the criminal cases. And so that also provides no protection to these individuals. We also know that the statistics on these types of crimes, the most dangerous time for individuals in these scenarios is often at the point in time when they are trying to leave their abusers, when they call the police, when they make that step. And so this bill allows them to be able to give notice to their landlord and to be able to terminate that lease if they get a warrant for rape, for sexual assault, for domestic violence, for strangulation, any of those, human trafficking, any of those types of crimes. Or if they get an emergency protective order where a judge finds that their life is in danger based from that person based on these types of offenses. The bill still does provide, as the law currently is, that they have to pay that last 30 days notice. I've had folks come to me and say, hey, maybe you should think about rolling that back. Again, in an effort of compromise, we aren't doing that. But I think that this is a bill that moves forward in ways that are very important for some of the folks that I believe we as legislators are charged with protecting the ability to escape their abusive situation in a timely manner so that they can be safe. And I'd ask that, I hope it's the will of the body that the Senate passes this bill out.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 23, no 17.
Ayes 23, no 17. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1116, a bill relating to Uniform Trust Code, qualified trustee definition.
Senator Eben, the senator from...
Yeah, I rise for a motion on the previous bill that, having voted on the prevailing side by which we passed HB 884, that we reconsider that vote.
Senator Eben, if you would allow us to continue with this particular bill since it's already on the board and might have a repeat of a stuck board. Senator Sturdivant, the senator from Colonial Heights.
Madam President, I move that the bill pass. And speaking to that,
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, this bill, Senate Bill 1116, expands the definition of independent qualified trustee and qualified trustee to authorize additional entities to serve as an independent qualified trustee or a qualified trustee. The issue that was brought to me by the Virginia Bar Association is that as presently defined, it could be read to indicate that only banks or trust companies could serve as trustees, and so this change to the definition expands that access to justice so that charitable organizations, law firms, and others may serve as a qualified or independent qualified trustee. And with that explanation, I move that the bill pass.
Senator Durant, the senator from Stafford. The question is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The bill passes.
Madam President,
For what purpose does the senator from Alexandria rise?
for a motion, having voted on the prevailing side of SB 884, I move that we reconsider that vote.
The question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 884 passed be reconsidered? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. Vote is reconsidered. Senator Perry.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise again to move passage of the bill, Senate Bill 884. Again, this is a bill that helps protect and expand protections for victims of domestic violence, victims of sexual assault, victims of human trafficking, and victims of stalking offenses. The bill helps because it allows individuals in those types of situations to escape from their abusers at the point in time when studies tell us that individuals are most in danger, their lives are most in danger of being lost because of their abusers. Current law does not permit that because it requires a criminal conviction or a issuance of a permanent protective order. Thank you, Madam President. I hope it's the will of the body to pass the bill.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 25, noes 15.
Ayes 25, noes 15. The bill passes.
Senate Bill 1118, a bill relating to registration by localities of cemeteries on private property.
Senator Rome, the senator from Western Prince William.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, speaking to the bill.
Are you moving passage?
Yes, Madam President, moving passage of the bill and speaking to the motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, this bill builds off something that we did 3 years ago, where originally the code that we adopted had said any locality may adopt an ordinance setting forth a register of identified cemeteries, graveyards, or other places of burial located on private property not belonging to any memorial or monumental association, with a bunch of other texts after that. We are changing any locality may to all localities shall, and we are adding in an enactment clause at the very end that says that the provisions of this act shall become effective on July 1st, 2026. Whole reason for that is that when we as the General Assembly passed this in the first place, we were doing the very light touch for the localities saying, hey, could you please do this? We're having a problem in Thoroughfare, which is in the western part of my district. We're having some other problems where we're having cemeteries where development is happening that were basically either mistakenly destroyed, or sometimes someone just didn't care and they would go through it. Well, 3 years later, we've not gotten the result that we wanted. And so this is okay, now it's time for y'all to get it done. We don't expect this to be a big deal in terms of how localities can actually implement it. And we don't expect it to be a big cost because they already have the information that they need for this. And so at this point, Madam President, I renew the motion to pass SB 1118.
The question is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. The bill passes.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on second reading.
Chair calls on Senator Surreville, the senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Madam President, I move that all the Senate bills on, we're on second reading, hold on. Went too far. Sorry, all the bills on second reading on the uncontested calendar on pages 11 through 18, Senate bills 1309 through 1250 be advanced their engrossment in a block. And third reading in a block, after the adoption of any amendments thereto, any senator desiring to move a bill from the block shall do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill.
The question is, shall all Senate bills on second reading on the uncontested calendar, pages 11 through 18, Senate bills 1309 through Senate Bill 1250, be engrossed and advanced to their third reading after the adoption of any amendments thereto, with the understanding that any senator desiring a bill to be removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. Those in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are before us. The clerk will now read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 1309, reported from the Committee on General Laws and Technology with a substitute, and we have a floor substitute.
Senator McPike, the senior senator from Prince William.
Thank you, Madam President. Ask that bill go by for the day.
Without objection, Senate Bill 1309 goes by for the day. Out of the block.
Senate Bill 770, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. Senate Bill 774, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Bill 799, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Bill 801, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with amendments.
Senator Favola, the senator from Arlington.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the amendments be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 811, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. Senate Bill 818, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
The question is, shall Senator Favola, the senator from Arlington.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the substitute be agreed to for Senate Bill 818.
The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 834, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. Senate Bill 878, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Bill 959, reported from the Committee on Transportation. Senate Bill 966, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Bill 1004, reported from the Committee on Transportation with amendments.
Senator Boysko, the senator from Northern Fairfax.
Madam President, I move the substitute be agreed to.
The committee amendments.
Committee amendments be agreed to.
The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The committee amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 1020, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. Senate Bill 1028, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Bill 1131, reported from the Committee on Transportation. Senate Bill 1173, reported from the Committee on Transportation with amendment.
Senator Sudeline, the senator from Roanoke.
Thank you, Madam President. Can Senate Bill 1173 please go by for the day?
Without objection, Senate Bill 1173 is out of the block and by for the day.
Senate Bill 1184, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Bill 1239, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Bill 1250, reported from the Committee on Transportation.
The question is, shall the bills in the block pass? That is, all bills oh, I'm sorry. I'm ahead of myself. The question is, shall the bills in the block be engrossed and advanced to their third reading? That is, all bills except Senate Bill 1309 on page 11 and Senate Bill 1173 on page 17, which are both out of the block and by for the day. Those in favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are engrossed and advanced to their third reading.
Senate Bill 778, a bill relating to juveniles, adjudication of delinquency, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice with a substitute, and there is a floor substitute.
Senator Locke, the senator from Hampton.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, with the recommendation that it be rejected, I ask that the substitute from courts be agreed to.
With the recommendation that it be rejected, the question is, shall the substitute from Committee for Courts of Justice be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The substitute is rejected. Senator Locke.
Madam President, I ask that we waive the reading of the floor substitute.
The question is, shall the reading of the floor substitute be waived? Those in favor of waiving the reading will say aye. Those opposed, no. The reading of the floor substitute is waived. Senator Locke.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask that we agree to the floor substitute and speak into that.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, there were some amendments that were made relative to some questions that were raised at the committee meeting that did not make it into the substitute that was offered at Courts of Justice. And those amendments specifically were related to clarifying specifically that a child younger than 11 could be removed if that child was a danger to himself or to the community. That is on page 9 and 10 of this substitute. And it also clarified that if a child, what exactly happens to a child if the child is now not being able to be adjudicated as delinquent, how that is defined. And that is defined on page 15 of this substitute. And with that, Madam Chair, I now will ask that the floor substitute be agreed to.
The question is, shall the floor substitute be agreed to? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The floor substitute is agreed to. Senator Locke.
Madam President, I now ask that Senate Bill 778 be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
The question is, shall the bill now be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 852, a bill relating to photo speed monitoring devices, use in highway work zones, school crossing zones, and high-risk intersection segments. Proof of violation, retired law enforcement officials. Reported from the Committee on Transportation.
The senator from Chesapeake, Senator Craig.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I ask that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third constitutional reading.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third constitutional reading? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third constitutional reading.
Senate Bill 1302, a bill relating to limited duration licenses, driver privilege cards and permits, and identification privilege cards, expiration. Reported from the Committee on Transportation.
The senior senator from Prince William, Senator Pike.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third read.
The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on first reading.
Senator Surville, the senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Madam President, I move that all the Senate bills on first reading on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 19 through 23, Senate bills 901 through Senate Bill 1313, that the rules be suspended and the first constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed with.
The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the first constitutional reading of the titles of Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 19 through 23, Senate bills 901 through Senate bills 1313, be dispensed with? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The constitutional reading of the titles is dispensed with. The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars now on second reading? Oh, yeah, no kidding. Senator Surville.
Madam President, I move that all the said bills go by for the day.
The question is, that I was so anxious to put. The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars now on their second reading go by for the day? Those in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills will go by for the day.
Regular calendar, Senate Joint Resolutions on third reading. Senate Joint Resolution 247, proposing an amendment to the Constitution of Virginia by adding in Article 1, a section numbered 11-A, relating to fundamental right to reproductive freedom.
Senator Boysko, the senator from Northern Fairfax.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the bill pass and speak into the bill.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Every one of us in this chamber, I believe, probably remembers June 24th, 2022, when the Dobbs decision overturned Roe v. Wade, and the Supreme Court ended what all of us have seen over the past 50 years as a federal constitutional right to abortion, handing our power to make decisions about ourselves and to control our own bodies back to the states. This decision, as I said, overturned nearly 50 years of precedent, and it goes against the will of the majority of the American people, nearly 80% of whom believe that abortion should be legal and accessible. Our constitutional amendment will secure the right to abortion and the whole scope of reproductive health care in Virginia's Constitution, ensuring that Virginians' rights are protected for generations to come and cannot be stripped at the whim of politicians. It is based on Virginia's current framework, as we have had for decades, and it will take the issue out of the General Assembly's hands for once and for all. It keeps the patient, not politicians, in charge of their own health care decisions so that people can make their most personal and private decisions for themselves. It will protect the right to abortion, birth control, miscarriage treatment, IVF, and the full scope of reproductive health care in Virginia so that tragic stories that we hear around the nation since Roe v. Wade has been repealed, that will never happen to us. It protects our healthcare professionals so that they won't have to risk going to jail when caring for one of their patients right in front of them, as we have seen in other states where women have been left on a gurney bleeding out and the doctors are waiting to make sure that it's very clear that they are about to die before they care for them. It establishes a fundamental right to abortion so that no matter who holds office in our state, extreme abortion bans can no longer become the law in Virginia. This amendment ensures that Virginia remains a safe place that has been for women and families. We have seen other state legislatures across the nation criminalize patients seeking abortion. We have seen other states criminalize people who want to make sure that their loved ones have access to abortion by caring for them and taking them across states, or giving them medication that will assist, or taking them to the doctor or the clinic. Banning abortion takes freedom away from all women and all families to decide if and when, with whom, and at what time in their lives they decide to start or grow their families. And I think it's really important here that not one of us is ever going to sit at the bedside of a patient who is dealing with these issues. Not one of us is going to sit in the hospital with a patient. And I know for sure that every patient is different and every pregnancy is unique, even from person to person and their pregnancies. I had one of those very difficult ones and nearly died, and had a doctor telling me that if we didn't do something, that my daughter sitting next to me would no longer have a mother. So this is very personal. Pregnancy cannot be treated like a one-size-fits-all. And around abortion care, medically unnecessary restrictions make each of us less safe. SJ 247, the Constitutional Amendment for Reproductive Freedom, will enshrine the right for all of us to make decisions for ourselves, hand back power to individuals so that their families and providers can make these personal decisions for themselves, whether it's securing the right to contraception, managing life-threatening ectopic pregnancies, miscarriages, IVF, or abortion. Reproductive freedom is not only a health care issue, which it is, but it's also an economic, health equity, and racial and gender justice issue. My colleagues and I have heard from our constituents for years demanding that we protect their reproductive freedom. And I will tell you, in my district, I have heard from Republicans, I have heard from independents, I have heard from Democrats, I have heard from people who are not particularly political, and I have heard from folks who quietly say, I'm a Republican, but this is going to be the deal breaker for me. I'm voting for you because you are going to protect my rights. And I think a lot of us have heard these in this chamber. We have heard our constituents demand and beg for the ability to make decisions for ourselves and to get politics out of our bedrooms and our doctor's offices. And together, this year, we are delivering. Together, we will enshrine these rights to our Constitution, ensure our freedoms are no longer at risk, and hand the power back to the people. And I think it's really important that we note that it is the voters who will have the final say through a referendum followed by the second passage in the General Assembly of the Constitutional Amendment. I know that we can trust that individuals should and will have the ability to make the decisions for themselves, and they will be able to do that at the ballots. I thank you so much. I understand that My colleagues on the other side of the aisle have very passionate feelings about this too, and I respect that this is a painful day for some people. But our lives are on the line, and our constituents' lives are on the line, and women need to be in control of their own bodies. I ask the bill be passed.
Chair recognizes Senator Durant, the senator from Stafford.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the amendment.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, we heard a lot of debate and discussion yesterday on this amendment, and I would like to go back and revisit this one more time when it comes to our parental rights. This is enshrined in the very fabric of who we are as parents. It's never been up for debate, ever. Not until in recent years have we ever seen an assault against the rights of parents. We recognize the rights of parents because throughout the code, we can see that reflected. How often do we understand that for a juvenile, they don't have the capacity to make a decision? That's reflected over and over again. This is why we have statutory rape on the books. They are not capable of consent. And over again, we have opportunities where we must give our parental consent. In schools, there's really hardly anything our kids can do without having our parental consent. For a field trip, to be able to them to take aspirin at school, or it's not aspirin, but it's Tylenol or something for pain. Over and over again, we recognize this. And yet here we are in one of the most core invasions that could happen. We're rescinding that. We're saying we are no longer going to respect parental authority, enshrined in the very fabric of us as a mother, as a father, and to say strangers will make that decision that could threaten your child's life. If anything, we should never forget this moment right now where this body said we will not support parents. If anything, this part right there should be recognized. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Madam President.
For what purpose does the senator rise?
Will the senator from Stafford yield for a question?
Will the senator from Stafford rise and yield for a question?
Yes.
The senator from Stafford yields. The senator from Eastern Fairfax County has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I know the senator is not an attorney, but I was curious if the senator was familiar with the United States Supreme Court case of Troxel v. Granville.
Senator from Stafford has the floor.
A little bit. What's your question, Senator?
The senator yield for another question?
Will the senator yield for another question? Senator from Stafford. Will
Yes.
the senator from Stafford yield? Senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Thank you. Is the senator familiar with the fact that the United States Supreme Court has held that parents have a fundamental right to make decisions regarding the care, custody, and control of their children, and that U.S. Supreme Court case trumps anything that we do in this body, in the code, or otherwise?
The senator from Stafford.
I would answer the senator, if that is the case, then why is this body voting against that amendment here?
Madam President.
The senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Madam President, is the gentlelady also familiar with the fact that the right to parenting is also contained in the Code of Virginia? It was actually put in back in 2011?
Senator from Stafford.
Yes, I would. And I would also remind the senator, who is a lawyer, understand that code does not trump the Constitution. And if we do want to recognize the U.S. Constitution, then we should have no hesitation whatsoever to recognize the right and authority of parents in the Virginia Constitution, which was the beginning model of the U.S. Constitution.
Madam President.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Okay, Madam President, is the gentlelady also familiar with the fact that, at least not people on this side, folks on the other side, actually talked about putting a constitutional right, the right to parent in the Constitution of Virginia back in 2011, but actually withdrew it and decided to put it in the code instead?
The senator from
I
Stafford.
would answer that this body now has the golden opportunity to recognize and enshrine in the Constitution that fundamental and moral right of parents. If there's no hesitation or if there's been debate, then why not do it now? Why leave that up for debate amongst the courts?
Madam President, the gentlelady yield for another question.
Further question, Senator from Stafford.
Yes, I will yield.
The senator yields. The senator from Eastern Fairfax County has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Does the gentlelady have any concern that if we go monkeying around with what the United States Supreme Court has held by putting something in our Constitution which is not remotely consistent with what's in the United States Supreme Court case, that might create more confusion than already exists?
I would say to
Senator from Stafford.
Thank you, Madam President. I would say I do not like monkeying around, as you would say, with the Constitution. When it comes to the fundamental rights of presidents, I'm willing to take that risk.
All right. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Favola, the senator from Arlington.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I'd like to speak to the resolution.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I will just note that this body decided not to put in the Constitution parental rights because there was an acknowledgement at the time that life is complicated. Not every family is loving and supportive. Not every family has the best interest of the child. And we have to acknowledge that. In our code, we do have parental consent, but we also have a judicial bypass because we have acknowledged as lawmakers for years that there are cases when a child is raped by her father or stepfather. There are cases where a family would evict and have evicted their daughter because she became pregnant. There are cases where the family has actually asked the daughter to leave, if not evicted. This is the reality. We're not living in a perfect world where everybody acts responsibly with love and care. That's not where we're living. So we, as lawmakers, have to step up and stand up and protect rights where we can and acknowledge that there needs to be individual decisions made in certain cases. And that's exactly what this constitutional amendment does. This constitutional amendment relies on the general principle of reproductive rights, and it is a general principle, but it is an important right, and it is a right that we should enshrine in our Constitution. And this conversation about parental rights is a peripheral conversation which has been dealt with before and needs to be dealt with on an individual basis. Having said that, Madam President, I do hope it is the will of the body that this pass.
The chair is going to take this opportunity to remind the senators that it is understood this is a passionate subject, and as a reminder that comments must be addressed to Madam President and not to you and you and you. It is to be addressed to Madam President. Chair now calls on Senator Hackworth, the senator from Tazewell.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the joint resolution.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, I would also like to take the body to another date, and that is on September the 17th, 2020. I don't know that I've ever spoke publicly about this, but on September the 20th, 2020, my wife and I had a knock on our door, and it was our son, 5 o'clock in the morning. If you're a parent, that is a knock you never want to have. Standing there was my son with his 2-year-old daughter, and he said, "Dad, can y'all watch my daughter, Ariel, our granddaughter?" My daughter-in-law was expecting 32 weeks. She said, "We feel like there's something wrong with the baby." About an hour later, we get a phone call from them in the hospital that our granddaughter, 32 weeks, had passed away. They immediately did delivery. That evening, she was born. And it's very emotional, but I have a picture on my phone where her hand is wrapped around my finger, 32 weeks old, beautiful, fully formed. And I remember promising Allie Rose Hackworth, that I would always stand up and fight for her and the millions of unborn babies just like her. I was asked to speak at the funeral. What do you say? I remember a friend of mine had a print shop, and I printed stickers that said, had a pink rose, and said, "Do it for Allie," 4 words. I gave that to my family, and I said, "Children, family members, we're going to face hard times in life, but in honor and in memory of our granddaughter and our family, there'll be times we'll be called on to do the hard things in life. Do it for Allie." I took that sticker every morning when I'm home, and I open up my medicine cabinet. There's a sticker on the back of that medicine cabinet that has those 4 words, "Do it for Allie." So I stand today asking this body, where's the rights of Allie Rose? Where's the rights of the baby? There's nobody that has more respect for women than I do. But there's no guardrails here. There's no guardrails for Allie Rose. So I am keeping my promise to my grandbaby. And I'm standing up and I'm asking you, please do not go down this trail and vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator Cyphers, the senator from Prince Edward.
Madam President, I rise to speak to the joint resolution.
The senator has the floor.
We've heard testimony that SJ 247 is about reproductive health, that it's about women and doctors and tough decisions, that it's about rape and incest and protecting women's physical and mental well-being. But as I read the actual words of the amendment, and as I listened yesterday to the testimony of the patrons that defeated the amendments that would protect parents' rights and responsibility to be involved with one of the most difficult moments in their young daughters' lives, as well as require medical care for babies born alive, I realized that SJ 247, intentionally or not, is about more than meets the eye. It's an ill-conceived, destructive policy that only makes sense in a tightly controlled narrative and in the absence of truth and scrutiny. The medical dictionary for the health professions in nursing defines life as the quality or condition proper to living beings, the state of existence characterized by such functions as metabolism, growth, reproduction, adaptation, and response to stimuli. Based on this medical definition, there is only one point in which human life begins, and that is at conception. This is the moment in which the entire DNA blueprint exists and that the chain of human life begins. This natural, self-propagating sequence of life will continue until death. There are no other ways, short of supernatural intervention, for human life to begin, and death is the only way to end life. This is undisputable scientific fact. In fact, even Roe v. Wade failed to conclude that the unborn child was not alive, but rather concluded that the unborn child is not protected under the 14th Amendment, which protects those born or naturalized in the United States. In other words, if the child is not yet born, it has no rights, and therefore its interests cannot be prioritized with respect to the interests of the expectant mother. This is a legal argument, but it is certainly not a moral one, particularly in light of the fact that an estimated 95% of abortions are not related to rape, incest, or the health of the mother. They are, in fact, the taking of a life for the sake of convenience. Our friends on the other side of the aisle argued yesterday that ensuring parental consent and protecting the lives of babies born alive are unnecessary because they are both current law. But today in the state of Virginia, abortion is legal through the second trimester. And yet we are being told that this constitutional amendment is necessary. So this begs the question, which is it? Is current law enough, or do we need constitutional guarantees? And if we have constitutional guarantees, why do they not protect these children? This is a position of hypocrisy. We've also heard testimony about abortions that are performed to save the life of the mother. But as far back as 1981, former Surgeon General of the United States, Dr. C. Everett Koop, said, "The fact of the matter is that abortion as a necessity to save the life of the mother is so rare as to be non-existent. Yet, according to the Pew Research Center, as many as 12,000 of the abortions performed each year in the United States have unintended negative medical consequences ranging from infection to death." There's language in the amendment that protects even the most extreme third trimester abortions if the mental health of the mother is in question. To be clear, these are babies that have heartbeats, fingers, toes, fully developed organs, and experience emotions as well as physical pain. These are babies that are usually viable at the time of the abortion. The fact that there is no evidence that a late-term abortion could do anything to preserve the mental health of the expectant mother. To the contrary, evidence from the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry, as well as BMC Medicine, both suggest that abortions do not solve mental health issues and usually aggravate them, even when compared to the mental health issues that sometimes develop as a result of miscarriages. I would submit that any policy that relies on false and incomplete narratives is misguided at best and destructive at worst. Even with the best of intentions, we all have to exercise vigilance to avoid being used as instruments of destruction. And make no mistake, this amendment is destructive on many levels. For these reasons, I will be voting an enthusiastic no, and I hope others will do the same.
Senator Sturtevant, the senator from Colonial Heights.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the resolution.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, I think it's important that we be very clear what this proposed amendment to the Virginia Constitution in fact does. There's been some debate in committee and on the floor yesterday and as well as today as to what happens with regard to parental consent. It's currently and has long been Virginia law that for a minor girl to obtain an abortion, she has to get parental consent or has to go before a judge and get a judicial order. But the very terms of this resolution strike that from Virginia Code, prevents this General Assembly from requiring parental consent for a minor to obtain an abortion. And I don't know that anybody's constituent, no matter how they feel about this issue, is asking this General Assembly to get rid of the parental consent for a minor to obtain an abortion. And some have said that the resolution doesn't really address this issue, but the plain language of it very clearly does. And this is what the resolution that we are voting on today specifically says. It says that for the purposes of this section, a state interest is compelling, meaning it's compelling to be able to regulate abortion. A state interest is compelling only if it does not infringe on that individual's autonomous decision-making. Now, there's no one here that disputes that this amendment regarding reproductive rights applies to both adults and minors. That's not been disputed. It's very clear. It says that this applies to all individuals, every individual. And so what the amendment itself says is that no regulation can infringe on that individual's, meaning that minor's, autonomous decision-making. And Madam President, that is in fact what parental consent is. We recognize that young children who are in a situation like this, who are seeking this type of medical treatment and abortion, should have their parents involved. But under the terms of this resolution we're voting on today, parental consent does infringe on that individual's autonomous decision-making. And as has been mentioned yesterday and today, when the state code conflicts with the state constitution prevails. And if this passes as presently drafted, this constitutional amendment strikes the parental consent laws of Virginia and in fact precludes us from providing that sort of regulation. And for that reason and many others that have been discussed on the floor today, I would hope that it would be the will of this body to vote no. I recognize that's not very likely, and our friends on the other side of the aisle, they have certainly the votes to be able to pass this resolution. There's never been any doubt about that. But I would say that when a particular party is in the majority and has the ability to pass a resolution like this, something that is going to go to the voters and potentially be in our Constitution, there is an elevated obligation to get it right and to address issues like this. And that's why Senator Durant advocated for that floor amendment yesterday on second reading, which is the opportunity for us to amend a resolution like this, to insert into this resolution the very clear requirement that parental consent laws still apply in the case of a minor seeking to obtain an abortion. And that floor amendment of Senator Durant was voted down yesterday. And so the resolution that we have to vote on is the language that I read, that if a regulation infringes on the autonomous decision-making of the individual, of the minor girl, that it will be stricken. And so that is what we were faced with, and it would be my hope that the body would vote no on this resolution. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Obenchain, the senator from Rockingham.
Madam President, speaking of the resolution.
The senator may say on.
Madam President, a couple of things. One, I heard at the outset of this discussion that there was an assertion that 80% of the voters believe that abortion should be legal. It is legal under current law in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but I would also point out that 70% of those polled support parental involvement, including 57% of Democrats. Now, my friend from Colonial Heights is right. We had an opportunity yesterday to prevent this from being a weapon of the most extreme advocates on the issue. It is drafted in such a way that we know what is going to happen because it has happened elsewhere. We had an opportunity yesterday to stand up for parents and families, not to veto or to substitute our judgment, but to give families the opportunity to be involved in this process. We had the opportunity yesterday to stand up to protect babies who were born alive. Born alive. And if there is something that we ought to be able to agree upon, I cannot fathom that we could not agree upon that. We heard an assertion also a little bit earlier that we have to acknowledge that families are not perfect, Madam President. And indeed they are not. They are not. And we have navigated those waters in the past. And that is why, in a bipartisan fashion, we adopted common sense parental involvement laws in the Commonwealth of Virginia that take into account the imperfections of many families in the Commonwealth of Virginia and allow those families or those children who are making these decisions to go before a court to seek assistance from advocates. We are not supposed to be placing ourselves in the position of substituting our judgment. A couple of years ago in a gubernatorial campaign, I have a vivid recollection of one candidate standing in Northern Virginia saying, parents have no role in the education of their children, or something to that effect. Yeah, I remember it. And we should not be making that mistake again. We should not be substituting our judgment, precluding the ability of parents to have a role. You know, I've heard assertions over the past 2 days that this will not trump our code. And I tell you, that's a pretty big risk to take. We're talking about placing this in the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia. This is not just a typical run-of-the-mill legislative enactment. We have seen in Montana and elsewhere, the Planned Parenthood and the ACLU have mounted challenges to state laws on parental involvement and other reasonable late-term decision-making processes. They prevailed in Montana. We know that they're coming for Virginia's parental involvement laws. Why? Why would we not adopt that provision in this amendment? It may look, and I know it's been described, as a simple codification of Roe versus Wade. It is not. This is an extreme bill. This is an extreme measure that absolutely precludes any reasonable legislation protecting the rights of parents or protecting children who are born alive, such as those who would have been protected by the language that was introduced yesterday. You know, if we want to get it right, we've got an opportunity to back up, to take this language out of the next to last paragraph of this amendment, to take that language out that says expressly that there basically is no compelling state interest if it infringes in any way on an individual's autonomous decision-making, not a minor's, any person's autonomous decision-making. If we want to get it right, if we want to give our parental consent laws a chance, you back up, you take that out, we work together. But I don't think that there's a desire to do that. I don't think that there's a desire to do that. I believe that there is a desire to affect wholesale changes in the protections that we have embedded in our code that are going to undermine the value that we place on innocent human life in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I beg you to vote no.
The senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Surville.
Speaking to the amendment.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to make clear a couple of things here about the law. First of all, with regard to what happened in Montana, that decision in Montana was based on Montana's right to privacy. Virginia's Constitution does not have a right to privacy. It doesn't exist, and that's not in this amendment. There was litigation in Minnesota, I think about 2 decades ago. That was based on Minnesota's Equal Protection Clause. The Constitution of Virginia has had an Equal Protection Clause since 1970, or 71, when our Constitution was ratified. Our parental consent laws have lived in happy harmony with that for 54 years now, and the Virginia Equal Protection Clause did not affect Virginia's parental consent. So dragging up a case about the right to privacy, which doesn't exist in Virginia, or the right to equal protection laws, which has existed in Virginia and hasn't been used for 5 decades, is simply a boogeyman and a scare tactic. Roe v. Wade has existed in this country, or did exist in this country, since I was about 1.5 years old in 1973 in January. Roe v. Wade lived in happy harmony with the parental consent laws until it was abolished by the U.S. Supreme Court in Dobbs after Mitch McConnell stole a Supreme Court pick. Another guy got on after a background check that never really got fully done.
Senate will come to order. The senator is out of order.
How am I out of order, ma'am?
Because the senator has described an issue that is not. The senator has described the character of a person not here. in a
What
derogatory
manner of the
manner.
well, whose character have I impugned and exactly have I impugned
How did the
anybody's character,
senator
Madam President?
describe Senator Mitch McConnell, sir?
I didn't say anything about Mitch McConnell. I said a Supreme Court pick got stolen.
The support was stolen, sir.
Yes, it did get stolen.
And when was that determined, sir?
It's a matter of opinion, Madam President. This is our body, it's our chamber.
The senator is ruled. The senator is ruled out of order. The senator is ruled out of order.
I make a motion to overrule the opinion of the chair.
The question is, shall the motion of the chair be overruled?
I think it has to be sustained. Sustained.
Sustained. What is that?
Just give us a moment.
Okay. Where is it? Appeal the ruling of the chair. The question is,
Madam President.
for what purpose does the senator rise?
Madam President, if we could just be at ease for about 15 minutes.
The Senate will be at ease for 15 minutes. Pursuant to Rule 47B, which reads, upon the following motions, the mover shall be allowed 5 minutes to speak to his motion, to state the reasons therefore, and one member opposed to the motion shall be allowed a like time to speak to the motion to state his objections. We are now dealing with a motion to appeal a ruling of the chair. Senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Sturville has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, the operative rule that we're dealing with, I believe, here is rule that I believe, Your Honor, I mean, that Madam Chair, that you took offense with is rule, was it 40? Where'd it go? It basically talks about using words that are offensive. It doesn't talk about any specifically impugning the name of a person. And I would just note, for the sake of this discussion, that I believe I said that Mitch McConnell stole a Supreme Court justice. And I would note that I didn't accuse him of a crime. I didn't say he was convicted of anything. I used the word steal as an adjective, as a description of what he did in the United States Senate. And to the extent anybody thinks it's offensive, I would just commend the body to the words of Mitch McConnell. And I was poking around here in the interim. On August the 6th of 2016, Mitch McConnell went to a party on something called Fancy Farm in Kentucky, a constituent luncheon he has, where he stated, one of my proudest moments was when I looked Barack Obama in the eye and I said, Mr. President, you will not fill this Supreme Court vacancy, he said to cheers at the annual Fancy Farm picnic. So I would submit, Madam President, that if that was offensive, Mitch McConnell sure didn't find it offensive. And I would submit that, in fact, what the United States Senate did that day was completely derogate their constitutional responsibility to confirm a Supreme Court justice that was placed in front of them. I believe they had at least 6 months to do that, if not maybe even 8. And they just failed to act because they didn't want to. Failed to fulfill the constitutional responsibility. Now, maybe failing to fulfill constitutional responsibilities are a thing nowadays, given what happened yesterday. But Madam President, those of us who still believe in democracy and the United States Constitution believe that we have a duty to follow the oaths that we take. And the United States Senate didn't do it. Mitch McConnell led that effort. And those of us who watched that happen believe that not following your constitutional responsibilities like that, one word to describe it might be stealing it, albeit he was never convicted. So, Madam President, having said that, I do not believe any of the words that were uttered on this floor were offensive. It's kind of surprising that'd be offensive, given that we're talking about following your constitutional responsibilities. But, Madam President, I believe the folks on this side of the aisle disagree with your ruling, and we'd like to take a vote on it.
The senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley, has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I stand in opposition to the senator from Fairfax in his motion, which is a motion to sustain, shall the ruling of the chair be sustained. I stand to urge this body to sustain the ruling of the chair. The very offense that we're speaking of, where the motion was made that Madam President was out of order, concerned Madam President's determination that under Section 13, debate, paragraph 41, was violated by the words of the senator from Eastern Fairfax. And quite frankly, I must state that I concur with Madam President and that the chair was correct in her ruling for the following grounds. The rule itself, under Rule 41, states very clearly, because it sets forth the decorum of this body. And I know Madam Clerk would say, as she's looking here today, if she was here today, that I am standing here as now an older member of the body of something that I was always reminded of, which was that decorum and civility are the hallmarks of this chamber. The hallmarks. What separates us in this very room from those down the hall. For if we lose decorum and civility, then we've lost the collegiality of this body doing what's right for the Commonwealth of Virginia. Not here. And Madam President, I would submit that what we saw here from the senator from Eastern Fairfax, who I've known since I was a very young lawyer, and he was a very young lawyer. I know him to be a gentleman. But this was now and yet more evidence of the declining demonstrations of civility in this chamber. Paragraph 41 said, if words are spoken in debate that give offense, exception thereto shall be taken the same day and stated in writing. And in such case, if the words are decided by the presiding officer or by the Senate upon an appeal to be offensive, and they are not explained or retracted by the senator who uttered them, he shall be subject to such action as the Senate may deem necessary. The words that I heard, and I believe most of us heard, was that in justifying why we needed this constitutional amendment was because Roe versus Wade was overturned, because a member not of this body, not in this room at the time those words were uttered, stole the Supreme Court seat. Now, as a criminal defense attorney, I can say those insinuations are defamatory in nature and insinuate, if not directly, indirectly, criminal behavior. It may be a euphemism that it was used, but it still lacks the civility required in the respect that we should give people of opposite parties, even those that are not in this body. It is incumbent upon all of us that we maintain this decorum. And so when Madam President gavelled the senator from Eastern Fairfax out of order, she did so not only because she was right, but because we must preserve the civility of this body at every turn. We know each other. We work with each other. We are an example to the people not only that we represent, but to the Commonwealth of Virginia as a whole, because we are a commonwealth. And when we break down and stop in the nature that is required of us to be civil, to be kind, to not say words of offense of another, and especially one that is not in this body, then we do not stand as the upper chamber for any longer. What Madam President did was noble, right, and just in order to maintain civility of this body and the decorum that is expected by Madam Clerk, and by these rules, and by the people that elected us to be here. And for those reasons, my fellow friends, I urge that we sustain the ruling of the chair in ruling the senator from Eastern Fairfax out of order. Thank you, Madam President.
To put the matter before us in order, let me state it thusly. If you agree with the ruling of the chair, you would vote aye. If you disagree with the ruling of the chair, you would vote no. Now then, the question is, shall the ruling of the chair be sustained? All those in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 19, noes 21.
Ayes 19, noes 21. The ruling of the chair isn't sustained. Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Being last to speak, I would like to just address a couple of things that I heard in this debate.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. To the senator from Stafford and Colonial Heights, the focus on parental consent is an attempt to distract from the real motives that people have here, which is to ban abortion. We don't legislate through the Constitution. We establish baseline rights, and this goes into our Bill of Rights. We legislate through the code where our parental consent laws currently live and where they should stay. To my friend and good colleague from Tazewell, my heart goes out to you and your family. And my daughter was very fortunate to survive at 32 weeks. So I know what you went through, and I have a lot of pain in my heart for what you have experienced. There are so many other nightmares that people have lived with who have not had adequate care, who have not had the ability to have a doctor save their lives and have died on gurneys. They have died in their homes. This is a powerful and emotion-driven issue for everybody in this room. But at the core of this, I feel in my heart that we are doing the right thing today, that we are enshrining the right for individuals to effectuate their lives, to make decisions for themselves. And I ask that my colleagues vote yes on this very important amendment. Thank you.
The senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Madam President. Would the senator Northern Fairfax yield for one question?
Would the senator from Northern Fairfax County rise and yield?
Madam President, I yield, although I did believe that we were through with the debate.
I'm sorry.
The senator from King George has the floor.
I'm still reading, trying to reconcile this language with an amendment yesterday that had to do with a child that through the course of care of an individual may have been born alive. And if you look at these provisions, there's an absolute right to an abortion. There is no compelling state interest to in any way restrict that if that's what the individual that's carrying the child wants, and that is through the third trimester. And so my question is, if that child is born alive but has to be aborted pursuant to this, how does that jive with the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which says if you are born in this country, you are a citizen and you're entitled to the full protection of the laws?
The senator from Northern Fairfax has the floor.
Madam President, I would just remind my good friend from King George that we have already debated this. There is a current law in our code that has been there for more than 20 years, 18.2-71.1. Again, when we bring these kinds of questions up, it is intended to distract and to scare people. What I want to say again, and Madam Chair, the fundamental right for an individual to make decisions for themselves is critical, especially when there are lives at stake for the mother. Doctors need to be able to make split decisions. And it is only when doctors are allowed to follow medical standards and proven science that we know that our patients will be safe. We have already addressed the senator's question yesterday, and it is settled law in Virginia. And I again renew my motion to pass the bill.
Senator Stewart.
Speaking to it, Madam President.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I can assure you I'm not trying to scare anybody. I actually am trying to get to a place here. I understand that there are times when this has to happen. It makes me very sad. But what I'm concerned about is a provision like this that goes in the Constitution with no guardrails. And we've discussed this, and we all understand that the Constitution trumps the code. And so if this becomes law, there are no protections in the state code. And the senator from Eastern Fairfax was talking about constitutional challenges and this and that and the other, and I see this as a real issue because our 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees us those rights as citizens. And so I ask those questions in earnest and in good faith. There are no ulterior motives to trying to scare anybody. I honestly believe that in this body, we have a responsibility to get our legislation right. And I try really hard at that all the time, and I don't care whose bill it is, and I don't care what the subject matter is. I just want to help to get it right before it goes out the door.
The question is, shall Senate Joint Resolution 247 be agreed to? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. Senate Joint Resolution is agreed to.
Senate Joint Resolution 248, proposing an amendment to Section 1 of Article 2 of the Constitution of Virginia relating to qualifications of voters, right to vote, persons not entitled to vote.
Senator Locke.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that Senate Joint Resolution 248 pass, and speaking to that.
The senator may continue.
As stated, Senate Joint Resolution 248 is the first reference to constitutional amendment addressing the qualification of voters, the right to vote, and who is entitled to vote in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Specifically, this amendment provides that every person who meets the qualifications of voters set forth in the Constitution of Virginia shall have the fundamental right to vote in the Commonwealth, and that such right shall not be abridged by law. During a period of incarceration for a felony conviction, a person cannot vote. However, as stipulated by this amendment, upon release from incarceration for that felony conviction and without any further action being required, that individual will be invested with all political rights, including the right to vote. The amendment also provides that once a person has been adjudicated by a court of competent jurisdiction as having the capacity to understand the act of voting as prescribed by law, that person too is also entitled to vote. Madam President, the Virginia General Assembly should pass a constitutional amendment guaranteeing the right to vote for every citizen and Virginia resident over the age of 18, a right that 67% of Virginia agrees to. Again, I move the passage of Senate Joint Resolution 248.
Chair calls on the senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking to the resolution.
The senator has the floor.
Madam President, as I articulated yesterday, in this constitutional amendment, there are things that we could all agree. There would be bipartisan, and I think everybody in our communities would agree that if somebody makes a mistake, commits a criminal offense that is not violent, and they make their victims whole by paying their restitution, then at that point, they should get their right to vote back. Madam President, the difference between what I argued for yesterday and what this amendment does is there's no provision that a victim be made whole. No provision that their losses be taken care of. And Madam President, where we probably have a different view is on individuals that commit violent offenses, like murder, like rape, like producing child pornography, like arson, like carjacking. Those cases should be done on an individual basis, because I am confident that there are individuals that have committed some of those violent crimes that have atoned for their offenses. But Madam President, I do not think it should be blanket. I do not think it should be before you finished your parole. And it definitely should not be before your victims are made whole. So Madam President, I know this goes through a multi-year process, that we will continue to have a discussion and we can work to immediately come to a solution where individuals who committed a non-violent felony offense could have their restoration restored immediately once the victim is made whole. But there are certain things that we do disagree on, and because of the words in this resolution, I ask that you vote no.
The question is, shall the resolution be agreed to. Those in favor will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 18.
Ayes 21, noes 18. The resolution is agreed to.
Senate Joint Resolution 249, proposing an amendment in Section 15A of Article 1 of the Constitution of Virginia relating to marriage between two adult persons, repeal of same-sex marriage prohibition, affirmative right to marry.
Senator Eben, senator from Alexandria.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that SJ 249 pass, and speaking to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you. What this bill does, I'd ask the body to frame this debate with two questions. Do we want to bring our state's constitution into alignment with the laws of the United States? Would be the first question. And the second is, do we or do we not want to recognize the realities of the 21st century? One of those realities is that gay people can now get married. This amendment does a simple but momentous thing. Our Constitution's Bill of Rights, the heart of our foundational document, only wants to deprive citizens of a right, the right to marry the person you love. SJ 249 removes that stain, safeguarding it for Virginians regardless of their sex or their gender, and replaces it with an affirmative right for two adults to marry regardless of sex, gender, or race. It provides fundamental dignity and equality to our family, friends, and neighbors, and to me. It reflects the will of a supermajority of Virginians. It is time to let the voters take action on this amendment. They have earned that right. In spite of our Constitution's words, same-gender marriage has been recognized since October 6, 2014, following a decision by Supreme Court to refuse to hear an appeal of the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. And Oberfeld versus Hodges affirmed that fundamental right to marry is guaranteed to same-sex couples. I ask that the resolution pass.
The question is, shall the Senate joint resolution be agreed to? Those in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Does any senator desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 24, noes 15.
Ayes 24, noes 15. The resolution is agreed to.
Uncontested calendar, Senate Joint Resolutions on second reading.
Senator Surville, the senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Madam President, I move that all the Senate joint resolutions on second reading on the uncontested calendar, pages 25, Senate Joint Resolution 250 through 264 be advanced to their engrossment third reading in the block after the adoption of any amendments thereto. Any senator desiring to move a resolution from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of the resolution.
The question is, shall all Senate joint resolutions on second reading on the uncontested calendar on page 25, Senate Joint Resolution 250 through Senate Joint Resolution 264, be engrossed in advance to their third reading in the block after any amendments thereto, with the understanding that any senator desiring a resolution to be removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the title of the resolution or the number of the resolution. Those in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will now read the number of the resolution.
Senate Joint Resolution 250, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Joint Resolution 254, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Joint Resolution 261, reported from the Committee on Rules. Senate Joint Resolution 264, reported from the Committee on Rules.
The question is, shall the Senate joint resolutions be engrossed in advance to their third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The joint resolutions are engrossed and advanced to their third reading. Senator Surville.
Madam Clerk, does that complete the calendar on this actual birthday of Martin Luther King Jr.?
Yes, sir.
Senator Hashmi from Richmond City.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank all of the patrons who brought these critical constitutional amendments to us today. I want to thank all my colleagues who voted in support of these critical amendments. We have affirmed today that we believe here in Virginia that everyone has a right to vote, a right to marry, a right to reproductive health care. I also want to share just something that's very deeply personal to me about why one particular amendment, the right to reproductive freedom, is so critically valuable and important. It's not an issue that I talk about very often publicly because it is a painful one. It's a personal issue, a personal concern that I don't often share, but I do want to share it today. Given the kind of debates that we've had and given the kind of focus that we've been putting on the critical need for medical care that is life-saving and that can actually protect so many people throughout this country. You know, I have two daughters who are 7 years apart. First of all, I'm glad that I'm protecting the right to their access to reproductive health care by the votes that we've taken. But my daughters are 2 years apart for a reason that's not entirely unique to me. Many women in this chamber have had similar experiences as I, and the reason for a 7-year difference between my two girls is that I experienced 2 failed pregnancies in between, and I lost three children that I had already imagined into being and that I had already loved. The first pregnancy that I lost were twins who were at 16 weeks. The twins simply died in my womb. There were no heartbeats when I went to the physician. My second pregnancy was lost when I began hemorrhaging very severely at 8 weeks. Both of these cases require that I undergo medical abortions, or what we call D&Cs. And I'm only sharing these stories today because as painful and as traumatic as those experiences were for me, I am incredibly thankful that I did not have to worry about bringing a politician into my hospital room in order to give my doctor the authority to make a medical decision that was best for me and for my health and for my family. I didn't have to go into septic shock, as some women are now being required to do before their doctors can actually treat them. I didn't have to bleed so extensively that I was on the verge of passing out, as I almost was in the car as my husband drove me to the doctor, and that my doctor didn't have to call the hospital attorney to consult on the legality of saving his patient's life. I was truly fortunate in both of those instances, as tragic as they were and as personally traumatic as they were. I didn't experience what so many thousands of women are now forced to experience in those states that have rolled back critical, essential medical care. We are living in a dystopian and post-Dobbs world, and this is where, when private and difficult medical decisions are seen through the lens of politics rather than health care. So I just want to thank all of my colleagues who have voted to secure this essential medical care for thousands of Virginian women. I want to thank the hundreds of advocates who have been here constantly for years now, encouraging, supporting, and advocating for the rights of women to receive the critical care that they need. What we have done today is going to save lives, and I thank our patron, and I thank everyone who has understood how critical and essential this vote is today. Thank you, Madam President.
The senator from Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Sorovel.
Thank you, Madam President. Point of personal privilege and a motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, we had some sad news out of the eastern part of Fairfax County, the Mount Vernon part of Fairfax County this last weekend when our longtime supervisor, Jerry Highland, passed away. Supervisor Highland served on the Fairfax County Board from 1987 until 2015, or 28 years. He was very active in VACO. I believe he's on their board of directors. He served as chairman. He was also in the NVTC, the Council of Governments. He chaired the VRE at one point in time. He had a long, pretty impressive career in Mount Vernon. Saved Mount Vernon Hospital from closure. Worked with me to start the construction of a $1 billion bus rapid transit, which we're currently in the middle of funding. He fought for full funding of our schools every year in Fairfax County, probably harder than any other member of the Board of Supervisors. Founded this organization called Mount Vernon Home, which helps senior citizens continue to live at home as they grow old instead of going into retirement homes. He also, when Hurricane Isabel hit and about 1,000 people in my district were flooded out of their homes, he gave out his cell phone number at multiple town hall meetings and was out there on the streets helping people get their lives back together. He was really a true public servant. And he retired about 9 years ago, actually, when I got elected to this body. But I do remember when I graduated high school, I walked across the dais, and Supervisor Highland actually got up and shook my hand. I think it was the only one in my class of 420 people whose hand he shook, and still remember that moment to this day. But he was an institution in our community. He passed away. Where's the community center? We have a community center named after him also. And Madam Chair, I would ask that when we adjourn today, we adjourn in the honor and memory of Jerry Highland, Fairfax County, former Fairfax County Mount Vernon District Supervisor. Thank you.
Senator Boysko, the senator from Northern Fairfax.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise for a brief point of personal privilege.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I know that I talked a lot on one amendment, but I did not on another one. When we passed the Virginia Values Act a few years ago, I talked about how moms and dads want to be able to walk their children who happen to be in same-sex relationships down the aisle. And because we passed that, and my colleague from Alexandria has been leading that charge for years and years and years, it's a reality. I have a daughter who I will be walking down the aisle. And it's so meaningful to the families who now know that their children and their brothers and sisters' rights are going to be enshrined in our Constitution. And I'm just very grateful. And I didn't intend to speak, and I didn't intend to tear up, but here it is. We share a lot on the floor with one another, and I just think this is a really momentous day. Thank you.
Is there any other business to come before the Senate? Hearing none, the clerk will report any announcements on the desk.
Announcements for today, Tuesday, January 21st, 2025. The Committee on Privileges and Elections will meet 15 minutes after adjournment in Senate Room B, General Assembly Building. The Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources will meet 30 minutes after adjournment in Senate Room A, General Assembly Building. The Finance and Appropriations Subcommittee on Education will meet at 3:30 p.m. in the Senate Finance and Appropriations Room, 13th floor, General Assembly Building. Senators Locke, Lucas, Obenshain, Stewart, and Hashmi. The Education and Health Subcommittee on Health will meet at 4:00 p.m. in Senate Room C, General Assembly Building. Senators Favola, Suderline, Bagby, Aird, and Durant. The Rural Caucus will meet at 5:00 p.m. in House Room 900, 9th floor, General Assembly Building. On Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025, the Finance and Appropriations Subcommittee on Public Safety and Claims will meet at 7:30 a.m. in the Senate Finance and Appropriations Room, 13th floor, General Assembly Building. Senators Eben, Lucas, Marsden, McDougall, Pillion, and Hashmi. The Committee on Finance and Appropriations will meet at 9:00 a.m. in Senate Room A, General Assembly Building. The Democratic Caucus will meet at 11:15 a.m. in Senate Room 1 of the Capitol. The Republican caucus will meet at 11:15 a.m. in Senate Room 2 of the Capitol. And please note, the Senate will take its panoramic photograph tomorrow, Wednesday, January 22nd. Dress your best.
The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Madam President. Rise for an announcement.
Senator has the floor.
Given the hour, I would appreciate it if the members of the Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources Committee could meet 15 minutes instead of a half an hour, 15 minutes after. Thank you.
The senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn until 12 noon tomorrow. And in so doing, that we adjourn in honor of Fairfax County Supervisor Jerry Highland.
The question is, shall the Senate adjourn until 12 noon tomorrow in the memory of Jerry Highland, former supervisor? All in favor of that motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The Senate stands adjourned in honor of Jerry Highland until 12 noon tomorrow.
This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Chamber. Did you know that you can watch the Senate live on YouTube? Visit the channel by browsing to youtube.com/@Senate of Virginia. That's youtube.com/@ Senate of Virginia. Senate Chamber.